So you've got a quite an extensive career, but it's kind of Clinton Baptiste, which has really, really taken off for you. But your career is so much more than that. You've done everything from Shakespeare to Phoenix Nights, obviously, to Doctor Who. So going right back to the very beginning, what was it always the dream to be an actor?
Yes, I think it was. I think probably I was a bit of a show off as a kid, and I remember growing up in Pinner in northwest London. My parents are kind of lower middle class, son and daughter of shopkeepers. My dad was a tea taster, which sounds much more grand than it was. And my mum worked for Harrow Social Services, so they were very much sort of that's a very strange thing to want to do for a living, but they were very supportive. And I went to a very sort of strict after school drama school, which was a very good drama school in Pinner, which was run by two ladies who used to work at the Guildhall. So for many, many years, when you're a sponge from about the age of 11 to about 18, I was doing these drama lessons. And you sort of end up doing the stuff that is fun, but it sort of teaches you something. So yeah, I did always want to be an actor, and I'm amazed at 56 I'm still allowed to do it.
So there's no theatrical background at all then.
My dad, I'm not definitely not my mum's side. They're very not like that. My dad's side were sort of musicians. My dad was, played in dance bands part time. And the only connection we have is his second cousin was Alan Clare, who was in Q8 with Spike Milligan.
Oh, right.
And he was a famous jazz pianist who used to accompany Frank Sinatra and the like when they came over here. But really not, and particularly drama was not, didn't feature at all.
So what's your sort of memories of drama class? Was it kind of getting cast as the lead, or was it kind of second man in queue sort of thing?
I tell you what, I mean, we rarely did big productions. We do things like, Dulog festivals and solo festivals and Guildhall exams and Lambda exams and stuff. So I don't remember. We did a Hiawatha in which I played quite a good part in 1985, and I missed Live Aid to do it in a church hall in northwest London, which to this day I'm still annoyed about. But I think no, it wasn't really like that. It wasn't. It was really a drama training. It was really strict. Even things like elocution, you wouldn't believe it now. Elocution lessons and poetry and Shakespeare and tons of improvisation, which is my thing now, really.
Was that you're saying improvisation? Obviously, that ties into what you're doing now. But was that what you always preferred, ad-libbing and improvising rather than learning from a script?
I think so, probably. Although I was delighted to learn from a script as well. And when you're younger, it's much easier to
Yeah,
learn, I find.
yeah.
But no, I used to love doing the impros that we used to do. And sometimes they were very funny, other times they were quite tragic. But that was always kind of a mainstay of going in there and doing this lesson once or twice a week.
So then we're here then to talk about films that appeal to yourself in this case. So can you recall the very, very first film you saw on the big screen?
I would say that it was Sinbad, and but the thing that supported it, this was probably, I was very young, probably about 6 or 7, I'd imagine, was a film called Lost in the Desert, which is also called Durkee in South Africa. And my brother and I were so horrified by this thing. I mean, it still terrifies me now. And it was basically about a boy and his uh, small dog who are in a plane crash in the middle of the desert and then walking aimlessly. And it was so traumatic to watch this thing. It was really dreadful. And I've seen since on various websites and discussion boards people saying the same thing. That this thing absolutely haunted them as kids. And I can't remember, it was one of those Sinbad films, probably about 1974 or 5. And this film, was on before as a kind of support
It's like
film.
a double feature kind of thing.
It was, yeah. And which I remember in the old days, there was a lot of that sort of thing. You'd sit through this shorter film. as a precursor to the main one. And the Sinbad thing wasn't nearly as horrible and upsetting as Lost in the Desert. And he just had this dog called Lolly, and he'd be going, Lolly, Lolly. And eventually he comes across this, I think it must have been in the, on the Australian outback. He runs into this Aborigine who's cooked the bleeding dog. And it was
So,
horrible.
it completely traumatized you then from going to the
There's
cinema, did it?
another bit I remembered where the kid, to stay alive, nicks these birds' eggs and fries them on a bit of sort of wood under a fire, on a bit of bark. And I just remember thinking at the time, God, would I have the sense to do that? And even now, I think if I'm in a plane crash, can I find the bark to fry this egg on? Oh God, it was so alarming. It was so awful. And my brother and I would sort of make jokes about it, the way kids do, because we've been
Yeah.
both horrified by this film. We would make jokes about how rubbish it was, but it was, God, it was desperate. And there was, I just remember the sound of, his father from the control tower. The pilot had a heart attack, it crashed, and his voice going, are you there? Are you there? Please speak to me, speak to me. And it was this poor kid. I can't remember his name. It might have been David, but anyway, he wandered around the outback, and eventually he got found. But I'm not sure whether the dog survived.
I bet you were grateful to your was it your mum or dad that took you to see that?
It was no, we went with neighbours. We went with friends in the road,
Clearly didn't
and they
like you then.
they took my brother and I went along, and it was just, oh well, they must know what they're doing, taking us to this. God, it was horrific.
I was having a look into that film actually, and it's a film from 1969.
Yeah,
And here's my fascinating fact. They actually shot two versions of it. One was in English, and another was in Afrikaans. I, I,
yeah.
s- I say that's my fascinating fact. I'm kidding no one, but it's
No, I mean, that's what I do think. It was funny that that was on all those years later as a support film, as a first film, because it must have been about 5 or 6 years old, I imagine, by then.
so you started in earnest, sort of as an actor, sort of around about the 80s, and you worked early on with Kenneth Branagh in three consecutive films, Peter's Friends, Much Ado About Nothing, and Frankenstein.
Yeah.
He must have seen something in you to have cast you three times in 3 consecutive years.
Well, what happened was I met Kenneth Branagh and Rupert Everett. I was in the play Another Country in 1982 in the West End. And I was playing the young lad in their public school, Wharton, this character Wharton. It was a brilliant, brilliant play that won the Evening Standard Film of the Year.
Yeah,
Uh, and then I kept in touch with him. No, it didn't win. Yes, it did win the Evening Standard. That's right. West End. It wasn't the Evening Standard. It was the West End Play of the Year, whatever. Olivier Award, I think it was. But then I kept in touch with Ken, and when I did my terrible degree in drama at Leicester Polytechnic, which is now De Montfort University, which was a lot of kind of really pretentious rolling around on the floor and just not the sort of actors training I wanted. And then I got in touch with Ken Branagh, and he was at Edinburgh, and he came to see me in this production at with the National Student Theatre Company, and said, "What's your immediate problem?" I said, "Well, I really want a job." He said, "Do you want to come and join Renaissance, my company?" I
yeah,
said, "Yes." And he said, "I said I really want an agent." He said, "Well, I'm going off to film Dead Again, which was about in 1991 in the States." And this was the thing. He said, reverse the charges if you can't get an agent, and I'll speak to someone. And overnight, I had work set up, with Kenneth Branagh's Renaissance Theatre Company in the play Uncle Vanya.
yeah.
And I had an agent sorted, and it was just the most fantastic thing. So basically, through then, in my first 2 years of being an actor, I'd been in 4 feature films. I did a film in 1994 called Haunted as well,
Yeah.
with Kate Beckinsale and Anthony Andrews and Aidan Quinn and Gielgud, Sir John Gielgud. And so, when I started off, it was just kind of thrilling, and I really have Kenneth Branagh to thank for that. He just helped me enormously because, as I say, I'd just done my degree at Leicester Polytechnic, and it wasn't like being at RADA or something
Yeah.
where you have a showcase and the agents come along. Coming out of this awful degree, and babbling around. I was so grateful. So he really set me up beautifully.
How did you find Kenneth Branagh as a director?
An absolute whack. No, fantastic. How did I find him? Well, really, really lovely. And there's someone at the door. Hi, Al.
Hey, mate. She's just going to stand on stage.
I just need 2 seconds.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were in the middle.
Sorry, we're about to go on stage. Will
Oh,
you
right.
I just got to do, I'll go in a minute. Sorry, Al, won't be long. I've got to do a sound check. Yeah, so I found him to be really great, very, very kind, very sort of quite hands-on. You know, he didn't just let the camera run. He'd give direct. Quite often, you know, if you're doing film and telly and stuff, maybe not. I don't know about films much, but with television, there's such a quick turnover. It's like, do that, you block that. Okay, those are the lines. Say the lines. That's it. Bong.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to have a guy who is an actor to actually, you know, be quite forensic in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? Honestly, he's was such a nice, kind guy to me. I liked him before that anyway, so he could have done anything.
So let's come to your second film then. What was your second choice of film?
In terms of films that I have loved, I think Elephant Man, when I saw that, The Elephant Man, I mean, I'm really not much of a film buff. I like the commercial stuff that everyone likes.
Yeah.
Elephant Man, when I first saw that, I found it so moving and so beautifully acted by John Hurt. It kind of blew my socks off. Since then, I've seen it again, and it just goes to show it's incredibly slow. If you ever watch it now, there's endless shots of gas lamps coming on and deserted streets and sort of, you know, London drizzle. And you think, God, I'm not sure if I watch that at my age, you know, that now,
Yeah.
at that age now, I think I just wouldn't have the patience for it. So it was much more languishing and sort of, it takes forever to get there. But it's a very, I don't know how long it is, but it felt long. But God, it's so moving and so beautifully done. And as I say, very sumptuous and beautifully acted.
It's got a terrific cast, but it was also it's a David Lynch film.
Yeah,
Um
yeah.
and it's quite, you know, and he came off the back of Eraserhead to do that, and it's produced by Mel Brooks.
Right, right. Well, it's sort of epic. And I suppose the incredible thing about it, unlike so many American things, it manages to be moving without being mawkish.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like what was that awful thing with Cher and that kid with Mask?
Oh, Mask, yeah.
You know, this kind of terrible saccharine thing. It's really, really, and I think there's that scene with Hannah Gordon where she sort of sees him for the first time.
Yeah.
Does she play Cleves' wife or something? And she sort of has to go back around the corner and compose herself. I mean, that really, really sort of striking, beautiful stuff, very touching.
So, in direct contrast to that, let's come up to date now with your current tour, which is Clinton Baptiste
Yes.
as the as the appalling psychic. So
Yeah.
now, obviously, it's a spin-off character from Phoenix Nights, and
Yeah.
it was a character that Peter had created. How did you get the role? Did you have to audition? And when you got it, were you given free rein to improvise with it?
I'll tell you what, I did a play at the Edinburgh Festival. I did my show about British wrestling called The Wrestling, based on the book by Simon Garfield, where I played all the characters, Kendo Nagasaki, Jackie Pallo, Mick McManus. All the young people watching won't know these people. They were big names
Yeah.
on ITV, you know, in the 70s and early 80s.
Didn't play Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks.
I played the lot. I played giant haystacks with a big prosthetic head, actually, which someone made for me. But it was all, and it's literally their testimony of that time in the 70s and, you know, what big stars they became. So I played all these characters, and it was knitted together by a fictional character called Scott Bradley, who was going to be in Edinburgh. The idea that he was raising funds to go and fight in what used to be called WCW in those days.
Yeah.
And Peter Kay came along with bomber Pat Roach, who was in Auf Wiedersehen Pet, who was, of course, a professional wrestler.
Yeah.
And they reviewed it for Edinburgh Nights for BBC Two. And Peter and I sort of got on and we knocked around a bit together at Edinburgh that year. And then he asked me to be in That Peter Kay Thing, which was for Channel 4, where I played a character called Sparky in the bingo hall one called Eyes Down. And then he phoned me up one day and said, "Have I got a part for you?" And it was Clinton Baptiste for Phoenix Nights. And we did sort of work on it. I've got a video, actually. I've got a VHS at home, which no one knows I've got, of the auditions. And so there's bits, it really, it's his script, but there are bits that I put in during improvisation. And I think even on the day when we filmed it, there's a couple of bits I chucked in, but I can't really pretend it wasn't scripted at the start. And so it's entirely his creation. And hats off to Peter that he's let me do this. So this is my 4th UK tour now,
But I was
up
going to
and
say
down.
the characters take on a life of its own now because you're on tour at the moment. You do podcasts. There's YouTube. The tours
I
seem
know
to be getting bigger and bigger.
that's why I look so tired. I'm exhausted. Yeah, it is. I mean, I like to think, when I did it, it was only about 2 or 3 minutes. I don't know how long it was. Very short amount of time. And 25 years later, whatever it is, a bit less than that, 23 years later, people still remember the character. And
Yeah.
I'm amazed. I'm amazed and delighted. So I can't pretend people aren't coming to see me because they like Phoenix Nights. But they also come because they've heard my podcast and they've been to previous shows. They've seen me doing it as a stand-up thing. So yeah, I will look. There's no stone I won't lift to earn some money. It's so hard
So
to be an actor.
there's because of how it regards psychics. Have you had sort of complaints from, I say genuine psychics, but people who make a living as psychics about you taking the
I
mick?
haven't. No, I've not really had complaints. I have had people turn up who, there's a woman who came from the Parapsychological Society in Kensington who said, "Yes, it's all very amusing what you're doing. It's very accurate, parody of these people. But I just to tell you that your grandmother was next to you on the stage tonight." And I thought, "What does she look like?" And she said, "Well, she looks a bit like you." And I thought, "Well, a blood relative, there's a
Yeah.
chance." So,
What are the
uh,
chances of that?
yeah, so I do get that occasionally. I do get people, no one gets angry, but I do get people who do believe and say, "Yeah, but I know, I get it, it's funny, but this is a sign and that's a sign." And I was down in Twickenham and someone said that they could see, psychically, paranormally, that I had a load of my family on the stage with me, which is a very small stage, so I don't know how they all got on.
So then your third and final film, what's that? What's your choice?
Uh, I'm going to say The Truman Show, which to this day, I mean, I must be like a lot of people. I think about that a lot. Um, what is that? Is it non-playing character, NPC? I think it is. My
Right.
son often uses that term. It's those characters that wander around in a video game. I think I might have this wrong. Who he will often describe people as that he doesn't believe they're real. They're sort of here populating the real action. And I sometimes think that somehow we're in a great big game, and everyone must have thought that in their time, that somehow they're at this. I mean, when I grew up, I thought it was Jesus for a long time. I know a lot of kids have that thing, and you think somehow you are the exception to everyone else. And then it sort of offers up all these philosophical conversations about, the nature of society now. And there's that character. I mean, I don't have any of the characters' names. I can't remember his name. He's the guy who's operating, the sort of puppet master.
Oh, the Ed Harris character.
Ed Harris, that's it. And so, it just throws up all sorts of interesting questions. And it's just such a sort of, I think as I say, it's something that we've all felt at some time. Maybe this all isn't real and that we're just in a sort of giant set of something. And then when that starts happening in the film, it's so kind of intriguing and enticing. And
So,
again, very beautifully acted.
well, I was going to say from an acting point of view, I think this film was around about 98, something like that.
Yeah,
And it was the first kind of properly non-comic farcical role that Jim Carrey had played. And then, he went on to
yeah.
do, I think, The Man on the Moon not long after that.
Yeah.
And he seems to be like so many of the great comedians, they actually make great actors.
Well, I mean, without being too pretentious about it, you have to sort of root your comedy in something. If you just got up and told knock knock jokes, that wouldn't be that interesting. So I think you have to invest. If you're a comedy actor, and all stand-up comics are playing an extension of themselves, so it's all an element of acting, I'd say. There has to be an element of truth in it. Well, in fact, to be a lot of truth in it. It
Yeah,
has to look like it's coming from a place of truth. Otherwise, you sort of don't believe it.
yeah,
So I don't think it's a huge jump from. That's why so many comedians are frustrated actors. I'm always hearing that. I always feel like I want to go the other way and not be wearing the costume and not be sort of totally enveloped in a three-dimensional character. I like to stand there and go, any students in tonight, ladies and gentlemen, and totally rely on my material. And a lot of stand-up comics will always want to be actors. I think they're two sides of the same coin, really.
so with Clinton now, I say you're about to go on stage tonight shortly. The tour, as you say, it's the fourth tour. They're massively popular. Every tour gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
When will you be playing the Palladium?
I'm really genuinely hoping to do it in a couple of years' time. That might be pie in the sky, but we've sold so many tickets for this tour. Touch wood. I would love to do it. I would really love to do that. I'm led to believe there might be a conversation going on about it. By the time this comes out, I'll look very stupid when it doesn't happen. But I do want to do bigger venues because we're playing to so many people, and I'm just completely delighted about it. When you've spent most of your career with no one being remotely interested, and suddenly at 56, people like you want to speak to me. You know, it's really great, and it's just honest to goodness comedy. There's no angle to it particularly. It's packed full of great jokes, and it's very funny. I mean, that's when I go out, I really like to have a good laugh if I'm watching comedy, and
Yeah.
that's all it is. It's really all about the funny. I don't think there's anything particularly philosophical about what I'm doing. My director likes to talk about that stuff, about what Clinton is, what the show is. But the bottom line is you will have a good laugh.
So, I mean, Clinton, you've just sort of wrap things up now. Clinton is kind of the character that you've done on YouTube, or there are podcasts, you're on Patreon, there are tours which get bigger and bigger. The next step I would suggest logically is a film.
That's great. If anyone wants to make a film of Clinton, please make yourselves known. Um, yeah, I suppose so. Honestly, I have spent many years at the BBC and other places having a meeting about a meeting about a meeting, and then someone's vaguely interested, and these things drag on and on and on and on. And honestly, I'm very happy doing live shows where the thrill is instantaneous. You turn up, do 75 minutes, you see people loving it. That really is a reward for me. If anything else happens, that's great. But honestly, I've spent many years knocking on the door of production companies for Clinton, Barry from Watford, other ideas I've had.
Yeah,
And I'm very happy doing this for as long as I can keep standing.
that's great. Thank you ever so much for your time, Alex. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And I'm sure we will meet up very soon.
Thank you, Simon. Cheers.
Take care. Cheers.